Welcome, everybody, back to the Zoarc Podcast. We're here today with Dylan Slattery, a friend of mine who actually overcame stage 4 cancer and is now a motivational, inspirational figure. Really appreciate you coming on the show.
Yeah, man. Thanks for having me. Appreciate it.
Yeah, man. So tell us a little bit about kind of your story, your background, and kind of what you've come through to get to where you're at.
Yeah, so first of all, Connor, thanks for having me on the show. I love what you're doing with Zoarc, and I'm always proud to rock Zoarc, whether I'm working out or climbing a mountain. I love doing that as well. But so my brand, Stage 4 to On Stage, really recognizes, first of all, that you don't have to have cancer to be in a state of Stage 4. In fact, the case that I see most often where people are just truly in a position of Stage 4 mentality, whether it's, they're dealing with depression, anxiety, which stems from maybe it's jealousy, anger, or comparison. Comparison is what I see a ton of, and social media doesn't do anybody any favors when it comes to getting away from that. It seems like every time you're scrolling, you're comparing your life to someone else. But really, where my story starts is when I was 22 years old. I was dealing with a tough breakup, and it was really the first time where I felt like I wasn't good enough for someone, and I struggled with that mentally. And I went into this place of depression, and stopped going to class, started drinking heavily, started getting into some drugs, and my mentality and my mindset only went to a worse and darker place. Fast forward 2 months, so we're in April of the year I turned 22. I was diagnosed with melanoma for the first time. So I had surgery, and I have a scar that runs from the top of my right ear all the way down to the middle of the right side of my neck. And at that point, I used it as just an excuse to stop going to class, stop showing up, whether it was my internship or what have you. And so the pattern that I see looking back now is I continued to run away from my problems and use those as an excuse to focus on what was really important to me. And just when I thought things couldn't get any worse, in December of that year, I was in a car accident where I lost a high school friend and a high school classmate of mine. She was in the back seat with me when the vehicle we were in rolled over, and she was partially ejected and killed. And so, as you can imagine, my mindset even went to a darker place and suffered from some survivor's remorse, which was like, God, why didn't you just take me instead of her? She had so much to offer to the world. And so things got worse. I kept trying to drink my problems away, tried to avoid the problems rather than own up to them. And eventually in March of the following year, I decided that it was time for me to leave school. Fortunate for me, I had the credits where I could graduate, and so I did that. But it was a scary day. Honestly, it was the 23rd anniversary of my father committing suicide a month before I was born. And so when my mother got word that I was in a dark place, she didn't take that very lightly. And I thank God every day that she didn't, because who knows where I would be now had she not stepped in and we made some changes. But as if my life couldn't get any worse at that point, literally it was 6 months later and the cancer came back. I was at an Iowa football game, which we both love, the Hawks, and I woke up for a tailgate after being out the night before, and I had a golf ball sized lump that developed in like 5 or 6 hours overnight. And so instantly I knew the cancer was back. And from there, I got put into some experimental treatments because there wasn't a lot of options on the table at that time.
Man, that's just so, it's an incredible story. It's amazing to see, what you've been able to overcome. And can you go into a little bit on what, I guess, was able to bring you through those tough times?
Yeah, so there's a specific moment that always stands out to me, and it was when I was in the hospital in the ICU at the University of Iowa. We were in pods in the ICU, and so there were people in other rooms somewhat close to me. And so the lady across from me, she actually passed away one night. And so I got to experience what that was like from her family, like her siblings and people that knew her were obviously crying and then they'd be laughing, but sharing memories of her life. And I got to thinking, what would my brothers, what would my friends, what would my family say about me if I were to leave this world tomorrow? And so when asking myself that question, it became very obvious to me that I was living out not in alignment for the last 3 years, whether it was as being an example for my 3 younger brothers or being the son, being the future husband and father that I wanted to be. I was not in that place, mentally, physically, emotionally, all of the above. And so my brothers came to visit me the next day, and it was like that wake-up call. And it was that moment where if I didn't know my why up to that point, they were my why. And so they helped push me through the cancer treatments. So I was in the ICU for 4 weeks. I did treatments every 8 hours while I was there, and I lost like 35 pounds over a month and a half. But then after those treatments were done, I put all that weight back on and then some because my appetite came back, but I was still so lethargic from the treatments that I wasn't exercising or anything like that to burn off the calories. And so I got all the way up to 260 pounds. And then in January of 2017, when I was taken off of the treatments and declared no sign of disease, I was like, you know what, whether this was mental, physical, or both, my excuse is off the table, and I'm going to start to put the work in. And so I started going to the gym, and that's where things started, and it just kept compounding from there. So I was still drinking through that, and it became apparent that the drinking led to the 3 a.m. pizza on Friday and Saturday night, and that would kind of backtrack through all of the work that I was doing throughout the week, trying to get back into shape. And so started to cut out the drinking, which cut out the pizza. And so every time I would get to a plateau, I just started to cut different things out of my life, whether it was diet, different exercise routine. I started to limit like dairy products because it was hard on my gut, and different things like that. So it's been a process, but consistency has been the biggest thing for me. When I'm consistent with my diet and I'm consistent with staying strong mentally and physically, the rest of the areas of my life seem to fall into place.
So what are some of the things that you mentioned starting to, cut different things out and maybe create different habits? Mm-hmm. Are there some other habits that not only on the physical side of things, but also on the mental side of things that you've started to create, whether that's through, different, like we spoke about kind of on your podcast, the gratitude process and being able to be grateful for certain things and just processing different things in your mind different? Are there different like methods that you use to do that?
Yeah, and you mentioned like meditation and things like that, and truly it's like when I take the time to get my morning right, when I wake up when I'm supposed to wake up, when I start my day in a place of gratitude. And one of the things that I've started doing is every shower I end as cold as it'll go, and there's research that shows that it improves weight loss or weight maintenance. So maintaining a healthy weight, and also just that shock of your body, it helps strengthen your cells, but also just give you that wake up that you need to start your day. So that's one thing that I've done and found that it works for me. I would recommend trying it. I know there's a lot of people that take completely cold showers for that reason. I haven't gotten to that point yet, but that works for me. Journaling is always good. Any form of self-reflection. I think what's important is for people to find what works for them. Whether that's daily, starting your day there, ending your day there, both. Start small and then tweak to what works for you. I think that's the key that I would send home with anybody who's listening to the show.
Yeah, and it sounds like, a key to that is having a routine and having a structure. And that's something that I've learned as well over the past few years, is how important not only having a routine at night, but probably more importantly in the morning to get your day started. And, some of the things that you mentioned are very, very important. And a lot of them, probably the most successful people, are structuring their days in a certain way through morning routines, whether that is waking up and maybe getting a little bit of fresh air, some exercise, meditation, journaling, reading. You mentioned the cold showers. Have you tried the Wim Hof breathing technique?
Yeah, I was doing that for about a month. I really enjoyed it. I should probably go back to it, honestly, but yeah.
Yeah, that's something that I really like. I actually really, really like doing, so you do the breathing, the Wim Hof technique, and then the cold shower followed after that. And it just takes your body into such a different state. It's pretty crazy what a difference that it can make. But yeah, so you do a lot of that. Tell us a little bit more about your speaking engagements, what you do for, you're out speaking to different colleges and universities and different things to inspire and to motivate.
Yeah, and the biggest takeaway is, just having that growth mindset, whether it's business, as a athletics team, or an organization in general. If you're not growing, typically you're dying. And so adopting that growth mindset and recognizing that who you are today and how you've always done things is going to keep you right where you're at. So what can we do? What habits, what structure can we put in place to take your business from where you're at today to where you want to be? Or at the personal level, I do a lot of coaching on the mindset side of things in terms of helping people shift their mindset, whether it's making changes in their diet, their exercise routine, just the structures that they're putting into their life is huge. So one of the people that I follow closely is Joe Dispenza. And what he says is by age 35, literally 95% of what we do happens at the subconscious level. It's not even a conscious decision. We just react to what's in front of us. But if we can recognize that, then it puts us back in control and we can make the changes necessary to living life how we want to live. And you mentioned, the breathing exercises, whether it's the Wim Hof method or just meditation in general. Being conscious of your breath, once we're conscious of it, then we can make the change. If we're not conscious of it, we can't make the change. And that's how we get stuck in that victim mentality. Because if we think that we don't have control over it, well, then we're a victim of our circumstances. But when we take control of it, then we can make the other changes in our life to get to a place where we want to be.
Yeah, that's a great point. And you mentioned the growth mindset. And, if you're not growing, you're dying. And the word Zoarc, as you know, means maintaining life. And I always want to ask everyone that I interview what your definition of, so Zoarc means maintaining life, but what would your definition of Zoarc be? Like, what does that mean to you?
Yeah, Zoarc to me means optimizing one's life to be able to share that gift with the people that we love the most. So anytime you're trying to make a change in your life, it's all about attaching a why that will get you through all of the excuses that will come up throughout the day, week, month, etc. And so it's like, this is who I want to become so that I can share that with other people, because who I am today, I can be so much better than who I am today. And so I love, one of the guys that I listen to is Ed Milet. And I believe in God. I don't know about you or anybody who's listening, but when I die, I believe that I'm going to meet the ideal version of who I was meant to become. And he always talks about how I hope that person is my identical twin. You know what I mean? So instead of, if I were to die when I had cancer, I would have met a complete stranger, because that ideal version of who I could be, I was absolutely not that person. So my goal now, with whatever amount of life I have left, is to live it to the fullest and become as close as I can get to that ideal version of who God is going to introduce me to when my time's up.
That's a great definition. That is really cool. So is there any, I guess tell the audience where they can find you, how they can book you for engagements or interact with you.
Yeah, so working on a website. It's going to be up here within the next few days. It's going to be stage 4, 2 onstage.com. And you can find me on Facebook, Instagram, stage 4 to onstage, or Dylan Slattery, and it's spelled the right way, Dylan, Slattery, Slattery.
Awesome, man. Well, appreciate it. Thank you for coming on the show, man.
Yeah, thanks for having me.